Right. Let's get ready for a deep dive into some serious existentialism.
Sounds good.
You guys have sent over just a massive stack of sources on Søren Kierkegaard.
Yeah.
And it looks like today we are tackling his masterpiece, uh, Either Or.
It's a big one.
It is. It is.
Definitely a good one.
Yeah, and I know the basic premise of this book.
Yeah.
It's about these two contrasting ways of life. The aesthetic, which is all about pleasure and experience, and then the ethical, which focuses on duty and responsibility.
Right, right.
But something tells me there's more to it than just a simple, choose your own adventure between these two paths.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, I think he's going for something deeper here.
That's where Kierkegaard gets really interesting, I think. He's really a master of leading you down one path and then kind of pulling the rug out from under you.
Right.
And then to truly appreciate his genius, it helps to understand a little bit about the man himself.
Yeah. I have to admit, I always picture him as this stereotypical brooding philosopher lost in thought, in some dimly lit Danish study.
Well, the Danish part is accurate.
Okay.
But it's a stereotypical brooding. Maybe not entirely. He was actually incredibly prolific, squeezing an entire writing career into just 12 years.
12 years. That's insane. What was the rush?
Well, he was driven by a deep sense of urgency, I think, fueled in part by personal tragedy.
Okay.
By his mid-20s, he had already lost almost his entire family.
Wow.
So these themes of death and meaning and living authentic life weren't just abstract ideas for him,
Right.
These were deeply, deeply personal struggles.
Yeah, that definitely puts his work in a whole new light for me. So he channels all this intensity and personal experience into Either Or, which, as I'm learning, isn't your typical philosophy book.
No, no.
So how does he present these two ways of life, the aesthetic and the ethical?
So he gets kind of creative. The book is actually structured as a debate between two pseudonymous authors, A and B,
Okay.
each representing one of these lifestyles. It's like he's having this kind of philosophical conversation with himself.
I like that.
Yeah.
So who is this A character?
So A is our champion of the aesthetic life.
Okay.
Think of someone like Don Juan, always seeking new conquests, new experiences, just living for the moment and avoiding boredom at all costs.
Okay.
Pleasure, beauty, and constant stimulation are his guiding principles.
So he's the guy who famously suggests, like, leaving mail unopened for days just to prolong the anticipation, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. That's commitment to the aesthetic for sure.
Yeah, he's really going all in.
But then we have B, the judge,
Okay.
who steps in to make the case for the ethical life.
Right.
And he emphasizes responsibility, commitment, and surprisingly even suggests that that marriage offers a deeper form of aesthetic pleasure in the long run.
Wait a minute. So the ethical life can be aesthetically pleasing. Isn't that like a contradiction?
Not for Kierkegaard. He's not just talking about fleeting pleasures versus doing the right thing.
Right.
He's exploring how these choices actually shape our very being.
Okay.
The judge would argue that, true beauty comes from building a solid self, making commitments, and finding meaning in the everyday, not just chasing these fleeting experiences.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I'm drawn to the seducer's diary section, where A meticulously plans the seduction of a young woman.
Right.
It's like watching a psychological thriller unfold.
It is. The seducer's diary is definitely one of the most talked about parts of the book.
Yeah.
And it perfectly illustrates the dangers of the purely aesthetic life.
It's chilling how calculated and manipulative the seducer Johannes is. He doesn't care about Cordelia as a person at all.
Right.
It's all a game to him.
Yeah.
And once he's won her, he loses interest. It's like the thrill is in the chase, not the connection.
Exactly. And that's the trap of the aesthetic life taken to the extreme. It's a constant pursuit of novelty and stimulation, but it never leads to true fulfillment.
Right.
You're always chasing the next thing, never truly appreciating what you have.
It's like today's obsession with social media clout.
Yeah.
You're constantly seeking validation from external sources, but it's it's a bottomless pit.
It is. That's a perfect analogy. And the judge would argue that, true satisfaction comes from building something lasting, from connecting with others on a deeper level, from finding meaning beyond, fleeting trends and superficial validation.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But this raises a big question.
Oh, yeah.
Is Kierkegaard simply trying to convince us that the ethical life is superior? Is he setting up this whole either scenario just to lead us to a right answer?
That's where Kierkegaard throws us a curveball.
Oh, boy.
Many scholars believe he's not advocating for either the aesthetic or the ethical life exclusively. He's actually critiquing both.
Hold on. So it's not about picking a side.
Not at all. Both A and B have their flaws.
Okay.
The purely aesthetic life is ultimately selfish and unsustainable.
Okay.
And the purely ethical life can become rigid and stifling, reducing life to a set of rules. Kierkegaard is pointing us towards something beyond these two extremes.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued.
Right.
If it's not either, then what's the alternative? What's this third path that he's hinting at?
That's where we get to what's often referred to as the religious stage.
Okay.
Which is kind of implied in either or,
Right.
but not fully fleshed out.
Okay, so he's introducing a whole other dimension to this.
Yes.
This is getting complex.
It is, but also incredibly insightful. You see, Kierkegaard saw this religious stage as something that transcends both the aesthetic and the ethical.
Okay.
It's about a personal relationship with something greater than yourself.
Okay.
And it requires a leap of faith.
Leap of faith. That sounds intense. Like something out of an action movie. What did he mean by that exactly?
Well, it's not about bungee jumping off a cliff or anything.
Right.
For Kierkegaard, the leap of faith wasn't about blind obedience or following a set of rules.
Yeah.
It was about a passionate commitment to something beyond the purely rational, something you can't necessarily prove or fully understand.
So it's more of like an internal shift, like a change in perspective.
Exactly. It's about confronting the absurdity of existence, the lack of any inherent meaning and choosing to create your own meaning through belief.
Okay.
It's like saying yes to the unknown even when everything in your rational mind is screaming no.
Right. That makes sense, but it also sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
Isn't that what existentialism is all about?
Yeah.
That feeling of anxiety and uncertainty when you realize there's no cosmic rule book.
Absolutely. But Kierkegaard believed that, anxiety was a natural part of the human experience, a sign that we're truly engaging with the big questions.
Okay.
It's in those moments of doubt and uncertainty that we have the opportunity to make a genuine leap of faith.
So it's not about ignoring the anxiety, it's about leaning into it.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that doubt is part of the journey and choosing to believe despite the doubt.
Right.
Think of it like this. You're at a crossroads in your career.
Okay.
And there's this opportunity that both excites and terrifies you.
Oh.
It's a risk, but it also aligns with your deepest passions.
Right. I can see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
It's that moment where you have to decide whether to play it safe or take a chance on something you truly believe in.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about trusting your intuition, your gut feeling, even when you don't have all the answers. And it's important to remember that this leap of faith doesn't have to be tied to a specific religion.
Right.
It's about a fundamental shift in your perspective,
Okay.
a willingness to embrace the unknown and commit to something larger than yourself.
I think that's a really important point, especially today when organized religion doesn't resonate with everyone.
Sure.
So what does this religious stage look like for someone who isn't necessarily religious in the traditional sense?
Think of it as a state of being,
Okay.
rather than a belief system. It's about cultivating a sense of awe and wonder, a recognition that there's something bigger than ourselves at play in the universe.
So it's about that feeling of connection to something greater than yourself, whether you call it God, the
Yeah.
universe, or something else entirely.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're part of something much bigger than our own individual existence, and that realization can fill us with a sense of purpose and meaning.
It's like that feeling you get when you look up at the stars on a clear night,
Yeah.
or stand at the edge of the ocean and feel a sense of awe at the vastness and mystery of it all.
Exactly. Or the feeling you get when you connect with a piece of art or music that moves you deeply. It's about tapping into those experiences that transcend the everyday and make us feel connected to something profound.
This is making me rethink my whole understanding of the aesthetic life.
Yeah.
It's like those aesthetic experiences, the beauty we find in art, nature, or even human connection can be a gateway to a deeper, more spiritual experience.
That's a really interesting observation, and I think Kierkegaard would agree. He believed that the aesthetic life, while potentially shallow if focused solely on fleeting pleasures, could actually point us towards something more profound, something that transcends our everyday understanding.
So the aesthetic can lead to the religious,
Yeah,
but it requires that leap of faith to bridge the gap.
you've got it.
Yeah.
And that's where the real challenge lies. It's about choosing to believe there's more to life than what we can, see and touch, that there's a deeper meaning and purpose even if we can't fully grasp it.
Okay, this is all starting to click for me. We've got the aesthetic life, which can be fun but ultimately empty if it's all about chasing pleasure.
Right.
Then there's the ethical life, which provides structure and a sense of duty, but can feel limiting.
Yeah.
And finally, we have this religious stage, which offers a sense of transcendent purpose and connection, but requires us to take that leap of faith.
Exactly. And the beauty of Kierkegaard's work is that he doesn't give us a simple answer.
Yeah,
He leaves us with the challenge of figuring it out for ourselves,
Right.
of choosing our own path and making our own leap of faith.
I'm definitely rethinking some of my own life choices after all this.
Me too.
But before I spiral into an existential crisis, I think we need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. How did Kierkegaard's ideas influence other thinkers, and what does either or have to say to us in the 21st century? So we've explored these different stages of existence, but how does it all connect to us now?
Mm-hmm.
Did Kierkegaard just write a really complex self-help book for 19th century Danes, or does either or still have something to say to us in the 21st century?
I think his work is even more relevant today than it was back then.
Oh, okay.
We live in a world of constant information overload, pressure to achieve, and the feeling that we need to have it all figured out.
Right.
It's a breeding ground for existential angst.
Seriously. And social media just amplifies it all, doesn't it? It's like this constant stream of curated perfection making us feel inadequate if we're not living our most Instagrammable lives.
It's the ultimate expression of the aesthetic gone wrong. Chasing likes and external validation is like the modern day equivalent of Johannes and his endless pursuit of fleeting pleasure. But as we've discussed, that rarely leads to any lasting sense of meaning.
It's that classic grass is always greener trap.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're not supposed to be, living for those fleeting pleasures, what's the alternative? Should we all just become like the judge? All duty and responsibility?
Well, remember, Kierkegaard wasn't advocating for blind conformity to rules and societal expectations either.
Right.
He was calling for something much deeper, something more individualistic.
Okay. So it's not about, fitting into some predefined mold, whether it's the pleasure-seeking aesthete or the dutiful judge. But with all these external pressures, how do we even begin to, figure out our own path?
That's where Kierkegaard's emphasis on self-reflection and personal responsibility comes in.
Yeah.
He really championed, taking the time to honestly examine our values, our beliefs, and our desires. It's about asking ourselves those tough questions. What truly matters to me? What kind of life do I want to create?
So basically we need to, turn down the volume on all the external noise and really listen to our own inner compass.
Exactly. And that takes courage. It can be unsettling to face our own uncertainties and anxieties.
Right.
But that's where real growth happens.
Okay.
That's how we discover what truly resonates with us and gives our lives meaning.
It's like he's giving us permission to be our own guides, to navigate by our own internal stars, even if it means going against the grain.
And that message is incredibly powerful, especially in a world that's becoming, increasingly polarized and divided.
Mm-hmm.
When we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us what to think and how to feel.
Right.
Kierkegaard reminds us that authenticity matters.
He's basically saying, it's okay to be different, to question the status quo, and to find your own way, which is so liberating, especially for anyone who's ever felt like they don't quite fit in.
And his ideas have had a profound impact on other thinkers and artists throughout history. You can see Kierkegaard's fingerprints all over, existentialism from Sartre to Camus.
Right.
They were all grappling with these same questions about freedom, responsibility, and the search for meaning in an often absurd world.
Yeah, it makes sense that those thinkers would be drawn to Kierkegaard. They were all trying to, make sense of the human condition
Right.
and figure out how to live authentically.
But his influence extends far beyond,
Yeah.
philosophy. You
Right.
can find echoes of Kierkegaard in literature, film, and even music. Any artist who explores themes of individual choice,
Right.
existential angst, or the search for authentic self-expression is likely engaging with themes that Kierkegaard first brought to light.
So even if someone's never, read either or, they probably encountered Kierkegaard's influence in some form of art or culture. It's like his thinking has become part of our collective consciousness.
Absolutely. He's like this intellectual undercurrent that's been shaping, Western thought for centuries. And as we navigate the complexities of the 21st century, his ideas seem even more relevant now.
Yeah, he was really ahead of his time in so many ways.
He was.
He understood, the core human struggles, the search for meaning, the need to find our place in the world.
And instead of offering easy answers or rigid systems, he offered a way forward through individual courage, self-reflection, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty.
Right.
He reminds us that even in a world that can, feel absurd, we have the power to create meaning, choose our own path, and live authentically.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
From the aesthetic to the ethical, from leaps of faith to the enduring relevance of Kierkegaard's ideas. I have to admit, my perspective has definitely shifted.
That's the beauty of exploring challenging thinkers like Kierkegaard. They don't just provide answers. They make us ask better questions and see the world in new ways.
So as we wrap up this exploration of either or, what's the one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listener with? If they could just walk away with just one nugget of Kierkegaardian wisdom, what would it be?
I think it would be to embrace the unknown.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to question everything, to sit with uncertainty, and to carve your own path, even if it requires a leap of faith.
I like
As Kierkegaard himself said, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards.
That's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
So to our listener, keep diving deep, keep those thought-provoking sources coming our way, and remember, life is a journey, not a destination.
It
Until
is.
next time.